Good afternoon, everybody. Joe with ECRM here, and I have with me today David Brier. He is the creative director and chief gravity defier for DVD International. He's also an author of this awesome book, Brand Intervention, which everybody on the marketing team at ECRM has devoured, and mine is well thumbed and outlined in there. And today we're going to talk about the impact of the coronavirus on brands and what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing, and who's really going to rise above the noise, as David says. So, David, thank you so much for joining us. And how are you holding up over there?
Holding up just fine. It's just, you see, I'm in my office where it's there. I'm practicing, I'm practicing social distancing and being quarantined while we're doing this. So.
Yep. And we were supposed to be actually physically together last week at our Store Brands Leadership Summit, where Dave was going to be a speaker. So unfortunately, I was bummed that wasn't able to happen, but glad we're able to get together today.
Totally.
The other thing is Dave's got a huge social media presence, and he does this 1 minute Wednesday video every Wednesday, and today's was really hit home with me. But before we get into that, actually, could you give a little background on who you are, what you do, and what your overall branding philosophy is, and then we'll jump into the 1 minute Wednesday video, because that's a good way to roll into this.
Totally. Well, as you know, I'm a native New Yorker, Brooklyn born, raised in Queens, then a little stint on Long Island, then started my career in Manhattan. As this year, I've actually been doing this for 40 years, amazingly. And basically what I do is I work with a very, very, very wide spectrum of clients, and geographically, size-wise, and industry-wise, which gives me a very, very neat advantage. It was always in my intent, because I didn't want to be pigeonholed. But what I help companies do is, companies too often are so micro-focused on their own, we're the best blank, or we're the greatest blank, or we're the first this, and it's all about us. And I'll just say, look, if you went on a date, on a blind date, and the first thing that came out of the person said, let me tell you all about me. It's like, it's like, and just me. It's like you couldn't get the check fast enough to get the hell out of there. There would never be a second date. And that's really what I kind of look at. I look at the fact that, how do we basically take a brand and, one, have it engage in a way that is exciting, that's visually exciting, that's visually arresting, but unlike everyone else. So my whole philosophy is, one, the factor of differentiating. It's not the factor of trying to out-feature and have more promises and more benefits and non-GMO that, and and organically grown that, and locally sourced this, and pulled from the rectum of an exotic animal over in Africa, and that's just not. It's just like, that stuff only goes so far. So that's what I do, is I help my clients basically rise above the noise and really create their empires. Literally, there are companies around the world that their empires are built based on the stuff that I've done for them.
And that's it's so true. I've seen this a lot, especially in the CBD industry, where you have so many of these new startups, and buyers are telling me, everyone is telling me they're the first at this, or they're the best at this. Where I actually created a video saying, guys, stop saying you're the first or you're the best, because even if you are, nobody believes it anymore, because they're hearing it all the time. Tell them how you're different, So
that's right.
Right on with that. And so now we'll get into what's happening now and that 1 minute Wednesday. Give a little background on that.
Well, what spurred it on was, I've talked about it previously over the years, but what spurred it on recently was, I was speaking to an entrepreneur, and it was like, we went over what their company was, and it was a good space, could do a lot of, really make a big dent and give them the right position that they need to be in. And, and this is a newer entrepreneur, so this was a startup scenario. Checked with, and then what happens is they end up checking with their financial advisor. And then after the weekend, it was like, financial advisor told me to wait. so make sure that I have, in terms of available resources and da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, and I said, let me tell you a little story about my financial advisor. I said, my financial advisor, going back probably 18 years ago or so, I think it was around the time when Apple just started to come out with the iPods, right? It's before the iPhone, before the iPad. It was the iPods, and they would come out with the Nanos, and it was just like it was like basically the digital sort of equivalent of what the Walkman did for Sony, right? And it was like really like all of a sudden it was like giving new life, new breath to everyone discovering Apple on a different level. It wasn't they had to buy one of their a MacBook Pro or a full computer? It was like all of a sudden it was like a new space, and they had the iMac and the iPod. And I was watching this, and I was going, and I'm looking at it from my standpoint as a branding guy. I look at how do people engage in it? How does the culture interact with it? Does it become, and the most recent reference that everyone will know about, when I started hearing, hey, I binge watched blank, 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 and everyone now knows what binge watching is. Well, there's one company that's responsible for binge watching. That's Netflix. And that's because Netflix had a totally different distribution model. Netflix, instead of doing what the TV networks had done for years, for decades, which is they would drop an episode a week. Instead, they would literally take the entire freaking season, blam! And now you'd be like, shit, I'm going to binge watch. And so when I start hearing that kind of stuff hitting mainstream, where everyone knows what you're talking about, you can't say something to binge watch to somebody and they go, what do you mean? I'm listening to rock. So that's what I look at. So I look at cultural adoption, right? Mm-hmm. And penetration. And so what I look at is I go, so I'm looking back at Apple, and what happened was my financial advisor, he says, David, yeah, they're doing really well now, but historically what happens when they go up is then they go down. And that's what happens historically. And this is what he was trained in school, to look at past performances, past patterns. And I said, yeah, but I'm seeing, because that's all I can tell you. That's what and so every year when we would like sit down and have our organizing meeting, looking at past and future, he would, I'd say, when we had that conversation, Apple stock has continued to go up. And he's gone, yeah, I know, but when it goes up, and then went on for like 4 years. And after year, I think it was somewhere in the fourth year, I said, screw you, I'm investing. Now, had I invested when I wanted to invest, so the basic thing is I lost about $70,000 with what I wanted to invest if I had invested when I saw that it made sense. Now, Apple's still been a good company to invest in, and they're still rock solid and still continue. They're well managed, etc. But that was my thing. So I told her, I said, look, financial advisors and accountants, they're only looking at what's been done. What have we done in the past? What revenue have we generated? What money do we have in the bank? And that's it. That's the only thing they know how to manage. They don't know. You can't talk to an accountant about, let's talk some entrepreneurial aspirations here. Let's talk about, we've got a way to disrupt an industry. We got a way to innovate. We're going to change the freaking world. We're going to change this entire category and bring things to people. He's going to go, what are you talking about? Here's what's in the bank. That's all he knows. So I said, your choice, but I just want you to know, an entrepreneur and an entrepreneur's vision, those who are capable of changing the world, are very different than those who are capable of merely counting the beans after they've come in. And that's what inspired today's 1 Minute Wednesday.
And, you're absolutely right, because these entrepreneurs, if they're on the right path, they're actually doing stuff that's never been done before, or filling a niche. So how do you kind of use their past when you're breaking new ground? So, right. And this whole thing that's happening, I mean, for us, and actually it made me feel kind of proud of ECRM in what we're doing with our flip to the virtual meetings. And, because we saw three things going on. We saw the, for the buyers, right, the retail and food service buyers, one, they can't travel. So they can't do the face-to-face. Two, they have no time. They are just either busy dealing with out of stocks, or helping their colleagues, with supply chain issues. And then on the supplier side, on the brand side, they don't have access. So we were like, what can we do? And all the SVPs got together, the leadership team, and they were just like, well, let's create this thing right now that we, and that was the efficient supplier introductions. And those were it was literally 2 weeks into the quarantine that they launched it. And it's just basically, like I mentioned before, 20 buyers, 10 suppliers, 2 hours. Each supplier gets 10 minutes to present. And that was so successful that we, based on the feedback where they wanted something closer to our face-to-face, we are launching our first ones in May, but we already made the announcement last week of a virtual programs. But what we've been seeing, like you mentioned, is this whole world changed, and people are so, the example you gave with Netflix and the binge watching, well, now virtual meetings are an everyday common occurrence.
Every day.
They're going to expect it now. In fact, our SVP of Retail did an interview with Yesway's Chief Merchandising Officer, Derek Askins, and he mentioned, he had a great quote. He said, innovation is becoming expectation. So everybody is, innovating by jumping on the virtual things, but now that's going to be a regular course of business. So, it's just, we're seeing that happening. So now what I wanted to pick your brain about is, what are you seeing in the branding world? How is the pandemic impacting brands? What should they be doing? What's their situation right now as far as branding goes?
Well, a few things. First of all, the whole coronavirus pandemic situation is going to be an event. It will change how we do things after it, but it's not going to all be about this kind of. I think we reached this peak of like everyone talking about coronavirus, COVID-19, and there was, I think there was about a 3 or 4 week like freaking out kind of what the hell is happening, and now it's kind of like, okay, everyone's ready to fight back. Everyone, like, that's what I'm seeing on the rise. And the people and companies are willing to fight back. I'm seeing a few companies that are being very, very, very conservative. I think they're going to be way behind the 8 ball. The ones I think right now is literally going to be, it's going to show who are the true leaders as brands, who are the let's wait and see as far as brands. The let's wait and see, they're going to be struggling. They're going to be followers. They're not going to be leaders. Right now, there's an opportunity to, how do you rise up? I mean, and one of the questions that I've asked some of the clients that as we're going through this, I'm like, what if this was the new norm? I asked them that question. So what if right now this didn't change for the next 10 years? Are you still going to be waiting? Or are you going to be, holy crap, what adapting and pivoting do we need to do right now to become more relevant, to change how we provide our service, to change? I mean, because obviously a lot of B2Bs, they're really, really making Zoom video calls and such like that an integral part, that's as integral as a phone call or texting or whatever. And those that are more B2C, they're figuring, the landscape has changed. How do we make it so that, I mean, look, there are some industries that I don't think there's a great answer for. I mean, you go, okay, what are the airplanes going to do? What are hotels going to do? What are restaurants going to do? I think restaurants have it the easiest of all those, because you can't take a plane to go, right? You either get in the plane or you don't. But you can take a meal to go, right? So I think that it's that kind of thing. So I think that that's an opportunity, and I mean, because literally, I've heard one pizza place has been crushing it because they've been super proactive. Everyone wearing masks and everyone wearing their gloves, and they're doing this and stuff like that, and being really just very, very super helpful and all this kind of stuff. And others have been kind of, I don't know, kind of just licking their wounds, going, "What happened?" Well, you're going to be out of business by the time you figure it out if that's your mentality. So.
Yeah, we've seen some great in my neighborhood alone. I got a strip of like 30 bars and restaurants right down the block from me in Astoria. So there was one restaurant on the corner. It's an Italian restaurant. And within the first few days of quarantine, they shifted to a marketplace. And instead of
Hmm.
selling meals, they were selling their pasta, their sauce, all of the ingredients separately. And they changed their Seamless account to reflect that. And they're selling out by the afternoon every day.
Yep.
So those are the guys that are going to do well and come out of this. But
Yep.
the others that just haven't figured it out, and the other thing, like you've talked about in your book, packaging and product design and all that is a very important a component of the branding.
Yep.
In this environment now, where one, people are in stores, they're really just focusing on the essentials and what they need. I'm guessing packaging may not play as much of a role because, look, if they're out of hand sanitizer A and hand sanitizer B is there, I'm going to get that anyway.
True,
And
but let me interject on that
sure.
particular point. What you've just given as an example is a commodity.
Mhm.
In other words, right now, there's not a single hand sanitizer, maybe other than possibly Purell, that actually has name recognition. So the real opportunity, how do you become a name brand in this highly commoditized space? See, that's the kind of thinking you need to take. Because what you say is right. I mean, there's going to be, well, if they don't have that toilet paper, I'll get that toilet paper. They don't have that hand sanitizer, they can have, but the thing is well, okay, everything out of every commodity, out of every industry where everything was a commodity, all of a sudden you had a brand. Why? Because they did stuff differently, they positioned themselves differently, they looked differently, they spoke differently. When you and I were growing up, it's like, look, I grew up on Converse and Keds, and then all of a sudden you, and then Puma and Adidas a little bit, and so then all of a sudden, bam, Nike, and Nike spoke like nobody else. But look, it was all a commodity. So I think the opportunity that you just outlined perfectly is, look, that's right. If it's not this one, it's that one. Any place that there is if it's not this one, not that one, that is an immediate red flag that you have a commodity space, and it is ripe right now to create a brand. How do you create a brand in that environment? Because people need and want that. How do you bring it on with that opportunity? I think that's a great opportunity.
Especially for emerging brands that maybe didn't get that much space, or they just put on a shelf because they were the only brand that actually had supply, and now they could take advantage of that. And I think this kind of segues into that thing you mentioned in your book about what you do after the sale, that other 33%.
That's right.
That's kind of, can you talk a little bit about that? Because that is kind of an important part here in this commoditized space.
Complete. It totally is. So the thing is it, like what you're referring to is basically it's what I call the 66% rule. That basically there are three phases to branding, right? There's pre-sales branding, there's during the sales branding, and then there's post-sales branding. Most companies, like the majority of like 80+% of companies really do. They all do the pre-sale, which is, okay, promotion, marketing, Facebook ads, whatever they do. Boom. Pre. And during the sale can be anything from what's the package look like if I'm going by the shelf, and is that engaging me? Is it kept? That's during the sale, right? Or it could be something, if you had a salon, for example, during the sale is actually during the service. It's like you're getting service. The person's paid for it, but that's part of the experience, the transaction. So, but keeping it specifically to products that you'd find on a shelf, it's like, well, during the sale, it's like, how are you courting me? How are you seducing me? How are you engaging me as a prospective buyer? Now, of course, if now all of a sudden it's gone from the shelf to online presence, you still need to have a package and branding that's distinctive, because it still is going to be in the home. It still is going to remind and reinforce. But now during the sale branding might be a video and other aspects, other stories, etc. But those are the two common ones. The last one is the post-sales brand. That's after the sale. That some companies do it. I mean, Amazon has done it for years, where it's like, hey, we see that you bought blank, blank, blank. and they send you that's an example of after the sale. Someone actually taking the time to write a handwritten note and put it not in freaking email, actually handwritten in the mail with a stamp, and you get it and you go, holy crap, that's an example of post-sales branding. There's plenty of other aspects, but there's I'll give you a amazingly simple, stupid example, right? My wife and I, we redid our kitchen a couple years ago. And, we have Cambria quartz tops and this, that, the other, and it's all nice. And we have this particular sort of granite, it's made of, it's like ground granite. Our sink is made of all this stuff. And they said, we found after we purchased it, while it was highly recommended, that some people, we were noticing there were some white spots. We were going, that's kind of weird. And we looked online, and we were finding quite a few people were bitching about that. Going, what the hell's with these freaking, this was white spots. This stuff's not inexpensive. And my wife is like, once she gets a bug, like a bee in her bottom, and she's like, and she is just looking and looking and looking, and she finds this one woman who on YouTube talked about this sink and says this is what she's actually worked out, and all it involved. This is the ridiculous part. This is a perfect example of overlooked post-sales branding. Mm-hmm. So what it was is she found food-grade mineral oil, right? You take it and you wash the sink like maybe every couple of weeks. You do that and you wash the sink, and then you actually put on this and you leave it overnight. It restores it back. Any of that white stuff gone. Now, wouldn't it have been nice, first of all, if the company selling this would have told you? But it would have been nice if they said, by the way, thank you for the purchase. Now, here, by the way, on us, and I think it probably would have cost them a big 59 cents or something if they, out of their pocket, right? That would have been a great gesture. Cambria did a brilliant thing. Great example of post sales branding. You know how when in your sink you always have the whole top, and they have to cut out the big for the sink part. Now usually they go, well, that's just crap, right? They're going to throw it away. They were smart. What they did is it was big enough. They actually made a cutting board out of it, put legs on the bottom of it, and like about 2.5, 3 weeks after after it was the installation, they sent that to us as a thank you gift. So did it cost them any more? What, the labor? Maybe it cost them $10. Whatever the hell it cost them, was that left a lasting impression. Wow, right? Because here's the special component and why post-branding works, post-sales branding, because it's beyond expectation. We live in a society where the transaction is like, oh yeah, you pitch, you close the deal, you get paid, done deal. Thank you very much. You shake hands, you wave them goodbye, whatever the hell. And probably normally the only next time you hear from them is when it might be coming time for either your lease is up, or this, or that, or there's a new model, or there's the latest iPhone, or whatever the hell it is, right? Then they want to now upsell you to the next newest version, which sucks. That's a lousy business model. That's crap. It's like, usually I'm like, well, I haven't heard from you in 2 years. I'm not interested in doing business with you. I'm just a paycheck to you. So this all of a sudden now, so people don't expect it. They've been burned. Then they're used to the 1-2 punch. But now you come with the 3 without expectation, without asking them for anything, adding value, and you stand out remarkably. So that's an example, and it's a powerful tool, and it totally aligns with expectations.
And it matches the rest of the countertop too.
It's perfect. It's fabulous. But it's like, what a great way to use a remnant from something that would have otherwise gone in the garbage.
Yeah.
How smart. And right now we are in the coronavirus remnant sale. Okay, you got to freaking look at the remnants that you're leaving on the table, that you're taking for granted, that you've previously ignored. That's what I would tell anybody listening to this. That's what's going on.
Well, and speaking of, and I'm a big fan, and I know you're a big fan of this, of delivering value without necessarily asking for something in return, right? It builds that trust. It builds, they know that you're looking out for them.
Yep.
Now, in communications, right, brands and retailers in their communications with their audience during this time, one thing that kind of rubs me the wrong way is, I'll see on somebody's Instagram post, they're posting something that's completely out of context with this time and irrelevant. So can you talk a little bit about that, the importance of being relevant to the context and kind of, especially during a time like this?
It's vitally important. The bottom line, the worst you could do is right now be tone deaf. That's the simplicity of it. The worst you can do is just go, oh well. I mean, like I see some companies. I mean, I see two spectrums. One is that there's companies who are like literally tone deaf, and they're just plotting along, going about business. And I think, and I would say that many of the car companies are very, very tone deaf, especially ones who are going, in light of today's circumstances, it's like we're taking purchases for no money down, no interest, for 50 months, and It's like, so I want them right now in today's scenario, depending on where you're at financially. It's like you're inviting me to make a $50,000 purchase and put off interest and like that's the best you got. That's it.
Yeah.
And so that to me is a poor example. And then there's the other spectrum where they're just getting ridiculous. I think they're being opportunistic and trying to appear really humane and try. That's like when someone tries to be authentic and tries to be transparent and tries to be sincere. No, either you're sincere or you're not. If you have to try, this hole is much deeper than the one that you've dug. Mm-hmm. And so those are a couple of things I would say. Look, you started out talking about the 1 Minute Wednesdays. I mean, my 1 Minute Wednesdays are usually very in your face. It's like, here's the deal, bada boom, ba boom, 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 boom. Okay, well, right now, the first week when it was like when we were all shut down, I think it goes back 5 weeks now. I was like, I looked at what we had in the can. I was like, I couldn't do it. To me, it would have been suicide. Mm-hmm. And so I then pivoted big time. And I just started to talked about working from home, talked about the different things. I never went down what I call sappy lane because I'm not going to feel sorry for anybody. The bottom line is look, circumstances may not be ideal, or we all may be hustling in different ways and having to work our asses off a bit. That's fine. But I'm not going to feel sorry for someone. I will be empathetic, but I will not be sympathetic. I'd rather say, look, you know what? You still have it in you to actually get something done. You still have it in you to because your ingenuity did not get sick. Okay, your ingenuity is not in the intensive care. Okay, your ingenuity is right there. I'm looking in your freaking eyeballs, and you better freaking understand that your ingenuity is right there with you, with me, right now. How the hell are you going to use it? And that's pretty much the way I operate.
Yep, and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's you got your products that are your essential items, but then you also have the non-essentials, and some of them, might think, well, we're not as important right now. We're not, and they get into that panic or frozen mode. But when you think about it, there are a lot of opportunities for these quote unquote non-essential items if they communicate right. And I had a conversation with the NPD group about school and office supplies and toys and things like that. And if you didn't think toys were essential, well, if you got kids, you can pretty damn sure toys are essential items right now after 47 days of quarantine. But also little things like, you have people outside in my neighborhood, putting chalk designs on the floor, making rainbow designs, putting them in their windows. And there's a thing, which I didn't realize, but it's a thing, where people going around taking pictures of people's rainbow art and they're tagging them. But what does that involve? Construction paper, markers, paint, whatever. Yeah. But I don't see any of these brands saying, hey, let us help you come up with ideas for this rainbow thing.
Brilliant.
Painting rocks. Brilliant. So, yeah. I mean, are you seeing that in some of the space with brands where, are you seeing some being reactive and some kind of just, not doing anything?
There's a lot of not doing anything inventive. There's a few that are being kind of inventive. I thought it was very impressive, and this is one that I'm definitely caught my attention. The fact that Dyson jumped in, and I think they did like in I think 10 days they churned out 5 or 10,000 ventilators. Basically tapping into their talent pool of engineers and designers and fabricators, and did something like ridiculous. That's stuff like that is I think very, very very commendable, and that's that's the thing. And obviously some of the restaurants have been great. Some of them have been very, very ingenious as how they've done stuff. I mean, actually, one of the best ones. This is a great one. So movie theaters, right? No one's going to movie theaters right now. Okay. So what happens is a movie theater. There's a series of chain of movie theaters, maybe about 10 to 15 of them here in the Midwest, called MANN theaters. And so what they did was, I saw in the news about a week ago, and they ended up, so no one's going in the theaters, so what could they do? This is where the ingenuity part comes in. What they did was they were like, here's the deal. And I forget, I think it must have been like about a 10-pound or 15-pound bag of popcorn. You drive by, you call up, you place your order. You can either, if you buy a $25 gift card for future performances, then you can get the popcorn for I think you get that. If you do that for $25, you get the popcorn for free. If you don't want to do the gift card, you can come and you can buy the popcorn for $15. But the bottom line is like they were moving product, and it's like, and that was a good gesture. It's like, it was where are people watching their entertainment now at home? They still enjoy popcorn, so that was a smart idea, making themselves relevant. Look, it's not gonna, it's what it's gonna do. It depends on how much volume they move. But the bottom line is as we all know, where the restaurants make their money, they make their money at the bar, and where the movie theaters make their money, they make the movie at the concession stand. And so, all right, so at least it's moving some product. I'm sure they can upsell them, say, hey, you want some Twizzlers with that too? I'm sure you could do. But at least it becomes relevant in that way.
And what's ironic is they can actually use the Netflix and chill saying when they're selling that, kind of like a jujitsu against Netflix, and say, hey, sure, we know you're going to Netflix and chill, but come to our theaters and pick up your concessions to do that.
Yeah, well, they can say, hey, binge watching? We got the perfect snack,
And I think that's a key point. It's just that adaptability. I mean, I think brands need to kind of figure out, okay, maybe they're not going to be selling and marketing the way they have in the past. And it may be completely a different way, but something like that is going to keep that brand in front of their consumers in a relevant way. And they're getting, they're getting the tickets, so they're going to come back anyway if they're buying that. So I think that was a great idea. And what are you seeing in the online space? Because what we're seeing, especially with fast-moving consumer goods, people are buying traditional staples that they would have normally gone into the grocery store for. A lot of that is being bought online now. Your pastas, your canned goods and stuff. And a lot of that's going to continue. So what are you seeing with brands, and what do you recommend is how would they make that flip to addressing those consumers?
Well, I think it's a 1-2 punch. I think it's a combo platter. I think the brands are going to need to literally shift their mindset as supermarkets are our partners. They have to, and they have to now go, you need customers to come in, as we get through this and start reopening. We need customers to buy product. This is what we both need. This is how it needs to change up. And the bottom line is I've been saying this for years. I talked about, actually, even in the book, I talk about iTunes. That it's like, how did iTunes become relevant? Because of the fact that, music stores no longer had people who gave a damn about music. You didn't have someone who was into it, who was like, oh yeah, you're getting that Led Zeppelin album? Have you seen the bootleg? Dude, it's right here. I mean, it's like whatever, right? I mean, so in other words, that whole interaction, which you could only have in the store, was gone. Well, it was at that point that it was just its days were numbered. So right now, I think literally the bar is going to be raised, and I think that's the healthy part of this. I think the bar is going to be raised. How do you change it up? Because look, with us both being from New York, it's like, I mean, Zabar's isn't what it was 30 years ago, but Zabar's, it was an experience, right? Bertolucci's was an experience, right? Even certain Dean and DeLuca's. So the thing is that the experience part, they're going to really have to raise the bar and realize that they're almost in a little bit of now the theater, the customer experience in the theater of the shopping. And it's, what do you discover? Because if it's only a matter of fulfilling, right now, online shopping is pretty much, a lot of it is fulfilling a shopping list. It's not the discovery. It's not, oh my gosh, I just sampled that. That was amazing. What can you do? So I literally think the entire relationship, if you are a brand and if you are a supermarket or a grocer or a gourmet deli or whatever, you need to rethink your freaking model right now. You guys are in partnership. Otherwise, you're all going to freaking perish. You're going to perish.
And now you can't have that in-store experience at this moment. It's like you get in, get out.
And it's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. Look what's going to happen. Look what's going to happen. Shirley is going to tell Phyllis, oh my God, this is the first time I went shopping in 2 months. And when I went there, they had this, and I tried that, and they had this, and they had that, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, holy crap. And so, I mean, that, if you ignore that dynamic of word of mouth and that whole thing and realize that is your opportunity right now. The bar has been raised. Your in-store experience is going to have to be amazing. And it's going to not only have to be amazing in terms of what the store is doing, but also what brands are doing. How are you going to offer more? Or is there something that they could see that maybe in displays or whatever that will change the amount of information, the amount of education, all these various things? I think that literally the whole space is going to shift dramatically.
So, and talking about the future, the post-COVID-19 world, obviously a lot of things are going to change permanently. But what are your recommendations for retailers, for brands, on how to kind of gear up for what that world is going to look like? And I would imagine a part of that is marketing and messaging is so important now digitally, because it's going to be hard to do in an in-store environment until people start getting back there. But what do you see happening, and how would you recommend they gear up for that?
Literally, they need to right now saying, okay, write down what was the bar that was the acceptable level of customer experience, and realize that is no longer the case. They literally need to take inventory. What? Okay, well, we said, I mean, some stores are great, some stores suck. I mean, let's get real. Some stores, you don't say hello to anybody. I mean, some stores are so bad. I mean, there's one place I refuse to shop anymore because I feel if I had a heart attack and died in an aisle, I might not be found for 3 days. Okay, that's how infrequent. No, you can never ever find anybody who worked in the place to ever help you. So you're like out in a freaking desert, right? It's like vultures might come and find me sooner. Okay, and it was unbelievable. So that's the thing. It's like, okay, but some places are great. They have the rule. It's like someone comes within 10 feet of you, you look in their eyes. And then others, it's like they come within 5 feet of you, you look in their eyes, and you say hello, right? Those are the places that at least have a better performance level. Now, the thing is that what I've just described is no longer going to be enough. Okay? You now need to go. So how do you make it exceptional? Don't do the Band-Aid stupid short-term, think. Take it as an opportunity. Take it as an invitation to be remarkable. But do not take it as an invitation to put on a Band-Aid. The Band-Aid approach is going to be stupid. It's going to be short-term. You got to think long-term. You say, you know what? This is going to be this. Assume that. There's no downside to assuming this scar And this mindset is not going to change, and it's just going to be with us. Is there a downside to having that viewpoint? No, because then you're going to be over-preparing, over-delivering, and over-adding value and over-performing. Again, everything that, any points that you've observed, any points that I've observed, if you look at every one of them, it's all a matter of like ingenuity. They're going, okay, what now? It's like, it's kind of like this. If you were playing full court basketball and all of a sudden they switched one of the team members on the opposing team, and it was this the dude was like 7'4", freaking large, and he could jump he could leap over a skyscraper. Now you have two options. One is you go, oh crap, we're dead, let's lie down and we lose. Or you go, wait a second. How are we going to outsmart this dude? Are we going to like climb on each other's shoulder? What are we going to do? We're right now in that situation. What are we going to do? You have to go, okay, you just have had the 7'4" dude who's shown up, who can outjump anybody, outmuscle anybody, and you got to go, for us to win, one, survive the game, and two, actually win it, you got to freaking be smart. You got to be resourceful. You got to have ingenuity. That, to me, is ultimately what it comes down to.
And you know what? What a great way to wrap this up. I think that's perfect. Ingenuity and take action. That's what everybody's got to do now. And that's going to come in a lot of different forms. But like you said, that's where you want to be creative and start exercising those creative muscles in your brain and kind of do unusual things. So, so Dave, this has been awesome. A lot of fun. I look forward to doing more of these with you. And since we are going to have a virtual version of our Store Brand Summit, there's going to be other opportunities to work educational content in there anyway. So stay safe, and we will get together again soon.
Perfect.
All right.